You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there, and greetings from Texas, or as many women are now referring to it, Gilead. Oh man, lots going on here. I am so grateful that you pressed play with me today. I have been doing a lot of thinking and reflecting lately about how I am showing up on this podcast and the things I've shared. All of these nuggets of wisdom, if you will, that I want to help spread around to humanity. And have I always been right? Definitely not. The whole thing about there is no right or wrong, there just is a concept that I do find helpful because it speaks to our individuality, our uniqueness, the sum of who we are. We are not clones. Friends, we are not identical. The ways in which our minds tend to translate things that happen in the world are formed by our own experiences, our own lived experiences, what we have learned about life through living it. And we don't all receive the same lessons, do we? It's not a competition either. Who has the best life or the worst? That's not what it's about. But we sure tend to make it about that, don't we? We've absolutely been conditioned to do this, like living in the Matrix. I have recently been exploring human design after hearing about it from a few other podcasters over the past year or so, and I'm telling you, it is fascinating and alarmingly on point. And I'm not going to go into too much today because I have an episode with my friend Kim that I will be releasing next week where she's going to do a much better job of explaining it than I would. If you are not already subscribed to this podcast, please do, because that conversation is amazing. I wouldn't want you to miss it. For now, I just want you to know that human design is something I am finding myself getting sucked right into. So I have to be careful and keep myself from taking too much of a deep dive. I can see how this could be a total rabbit hole. And Kim is going to say that too when you hear our talk. We want to go straight to the intellect. Ooh, shiny and new, sparkly, look how pretty. Now I must go learn all of the things. So I do know that I have a tendency to want to do that. Many of us do. And many of us couldn't care less. That's the beauty of it. We are all unique, beautiful, and perfect just as we are. What I have learned about myself and my approach to coaching through skimming the surface of human design is that I have confirmed some things about my style that I love, how I show up for others, and I have uncovered some, let's call them errors in judgment. Let's take a couple of areas of coaching for examples of what I'm talking about when I say human beings are not clones. Yet there are ways that I think some of us are treating them as such, or ourselves, myself included. One of those is time management, the concept of time management. Oh man, that is a big one, isn't it? We never have enough time. There aren't enough hours in the day. Those are the thoughts we are thinking over and over until they become deeply held beliefs. We see them as facts. There just isn't enough time. Now, this isn't something that I normally coach on, although I have shared some strategies with clients who have asked for them. And when we talk about scheduling every bit of your time and really examining how much of it you might be, say, losing to social media. So here's a way to start tracking and holding yourself accountable. Yes, these systems and approaches work for some people. I can think of at least 4 clients off the top of my head that I have coached on how to manage time at their request. And 3 of them were like, this is very helpful. Wow, I'm going to start doing this. And one of them just about shut down and said, that doesn't work in my world. You know why it doesn't work for that one? It's not who she is. It doesn't line up with her design, her unique blueprint. She's not down with a cookie cutter approach. Now, we do talk about where emotions come into play, driving our decisions and how we can take a look at our thoughts to see where we may be self-sabotaging, of course. But there are also recommended practices and ways to structure your calendar that I learned in coaching school and that have been shared by many of the alumni. And for those reasons, I shared what I knew at the time. Since we're talking about time. And that's okay. I'm not being critical of myself about it. Again, it's more of that stepping into curiosity. Oh, that's interesting. What made you think that this could work the same for everyone? Was that ever implied when you learned it? Perhaps. It doesn't really matter how it happened, but it's just coming into that awareness that it did happen. Where what happened was that I passed on information that I've learned without fully considering the individuality factor of the person receiving that information. And I can also say, which I have done, this is what works for me. There's a lot to this, and I've only taken the parts that work for me and implemented them into my daily routine, and it's been enlightening. I've learned a lot about myself in the process. Do I still do it? Not consistently, which is highly recommended by the time management gurus among us. I do it when it feels right, because my human design authority is sacral. I am driven by how something feels in my gut. That whole thing I shared in my last episode about intuition being underrated, that came from my human design authority, which is a crucial component. And the best part is that I didn't even realize I was tapping into my design at the time that I recorded that episode. It's so fun to look back at that now and say, damn, you were really tapped in. Ooh, let's try some more of that. Again, getting that gut reaction. Now, the one client who recoiled at the time management approach, what was her authority? Was she driven by emotion, which is 47% of the population, by ego, environment, or something else? That'll be so interesting to know. Okay, I'm not going to turn this episode into a deep dive on human design because I'm not even remotely qualified to do that. For now, I just want you to know that it exists, which you may well already be aware of, and that it has me viewing the world differently. The people around me differently, way more than simply understanding how our minds work. That in itself is a huge deal. I don't mean to say simply as a way of dismissing it at all. I just mean there's so much more to who we are as individuals than what lies between our ears. We are not our thoughts. And that's something you will hear a lot of coaches say, and I absolutely agree with that. We are not. Just kind of teeing up my next episode so you're prepared for more of this great stuff. In fact, I'll drop a link in the show notes for you to find out your human design if you don't already know it, because it might be fun to have that before you listen to the next conversation that I'm going to have next week. Moving on. Another example of a way I see coaching treating everyone as if they are clones is weight loss. Again, not something that I typically coach on, though I will if asked, and I have. To be clear, I am not slamming my beautiful weight loss coaches out there. They are doing great work. I'm just saying that the way I was taught was that it needs to be this way. As with everything else we do, the focus leans toward the emotional aspects that are keeping you from reaching your goals. But there's also a component of the teachings that includes the role that certain hormones play when they are elevated, and to eliminate sugar and flour from your diet. I saw a thread on a message board about that in particular. Someone was having all the thoughts and feelings about eliminating sugar and flour. The replies were all about her thoughts because that's supposedly at the root of all of our problems. And that got me to thinking part of her pushback might have had to do with what drives her, right? Uniquely and individually. Overall, the approach to weight loss that I learned is fairly flexible around the foods that you choose, but the no sugar, no flour component is truly held up as being the standard. Well, what if that doesn't work for everyone? What if our bodies are different as well? That's a wild concept. Duh. I'll tell you what ended up working for me, and it had nothing to do with what I learned in coach school. I believe I mentioned it here only so briefly because I did an interview on my friend's podcast about it and somehow forgot that I didn't give it much airtime here. But I ended up losing 19 pounds in about 7 weeks, starting last October, by eating according to the ancient science of Ayurveda. I took a quiz, I identified my dosha, which essentially means your energy, and there are 3 of them. Doshas are the archetypes representing your energy. We are all made up of all 3, but we have a primary. So once you find out what that is for you, you can make choices about what you eat and when you eat that are designed to bring you back into balance. Now, here's the thing. I didn't even take this approach as an effort to lose weight. I felt bloated. My gut was a mess. I just felt sick all the time, and I wanted to feel better. The weight loss was a happy little side effect, and obviously necessary. And how great is it that I am driven by my sacral authority and my gut felt like it needed to be healed. I didn't even know what my authority was back then. So I checked out Ayurveda and it was absolutely wonderful. It still is. It's a whole mind-body system, or as I said, science of health that originates from India. And yes, yoga is a component. Love it. This isn't necessarily counter to the way I was trained for weight loss coaching, because that does allow for you to develop your own eating plan. What works for you? And eliminating refined flour and sugar for a period of time, I'm sure is great. I'm sure I probably did that through Ayurveda and eating for my body type, but I was also looking at the entirety of myself, not just my mind, not just my thoughts, all of me. I can see how the no sugar, no flour approach can be oversimplified. And I can see how it may not work for everyone, just like low carb or paleo or any other of the hundreds of approaches out there don't work for everyone. We are not clones. If a client asks me now for help with weight loss, I guide them toward Ayurveda. It is absolutely fantastic, and it is designed around who you are. It is designed for you to get to know yourself better and be equipped to respond accordingly. So really, this is what we are doing with thought work. We are really starting to pay attention to the thoughts that come to the surface and start to develop a better awareness of what might be lurking in the subconscious. That's all about getting to know yourself and what makes you tick. And it's only part of it. And Ayurveda takes on a more holistic view of total health, and human design is like our blueprint for who we came into this world to be. Those are the things that I've been geeking out on lately, and I love knowing just enough to start bringing them into my work. Either knowing how I work best and what time of day is most productive for me, which is Ayurveda, or knowing my strategy and authority and what drives me and how I respond, which is human design. All of this is to bring it back to the point of we are not all the same. And this is hard to see sometimes because great minds come up with great concepts. Then they create something from it and put it out into the world. And people absorb this and then decide if it's right for them. Or we are taught through an institution. Yes, even as adults, I consider coaching school an institution, that this is the way things are done. This is how you teach time management. This is how you coach for weight loss. Always? For everyone? All of the humans? See, I've never been about absolutes. I'm able to see the shades between black and white. Yet, I am also able to be influenced by leaders that I trust. And I think that can be true for most of us on some level. Varying degrees of influence depending on your own uniqueness and what messages resonate with you. And I recognize that I have wanted to get it right, and I'm using air quotes for lack of a better word. So at times in the past, I have found myself focused on what others think of me rather than what I think of myself, rather than coming from my sacral authority. If I can make a connection and help someone with their own transformation, then I'm living in my purpose. That's how I see things. And what an amazing time to be alive. Seriously. Because what I see with all of the angst and the fighting and the pushing back that is happening all around us, what I also see is this. I see humans who are coming into themselves, who are embracing who they really are. And they're saying, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to follow these rules. The systems of oppression need to be broken. The old ways aren't working. I have said your behavior matters, and I do still believe that. I can still send love and light to the people whom I disagree with. I can still honor that they are living in the truth that they know at this time in their lives. I don't necessarily get myself bent out of shape, so to speak, when others hold opposing views about society, human rights, and just in general, how this matrix we're living in has been designed. I have a newfound affinity for human design, yes. But that doesn't mean I'm going to try to immerse myself in it and go around reading people or assigning labels to them. That's not how this works. That's not helpful, in my opinion, for me at this time. What I do find helpful is to open myself up to further understanding and acceptance of our uniqueness as human beings. That doesn't mean we all have to agree with one another all the time. That's also not how this works. We will not always be aligned with the same purpose and passions as those around us because we are not clones. Every single thing that I say here or in a private coaching session or on social media is not likely to be meaningful through your lens, your filters. I think that's the mistake that we make dealing in absolutes with our teachers and guides. What I mean by that is that if we experience a strong level of connection with an influencer, let's say, we start to settle into a place where we think everything that person says must be right, true, and damn near perfect. Well, it isn't, because we are all perfectly imperfect. We make mistakes, we learn from them, and we experience growth as a result. And since every path is different and each of us have our own genetic codes, we're going to learn, grow, and evolve according to our own design and on our own time, aren't we? That's so cool. So, what seems to have worked a couple of years ago might need to be revisited and tweaked. Adjustments may be in order. That's great news when that comes around. It means you are really beginning to tune into yourself, who you really are, and what your purpose is. I have learned volumes about myself since coaching school because while going through certification, I was definitely focused on checking the boxes and getting it quote unquote right. There were rules to follow. There were criteria to be met and tests to pass. While I was immersed in that part of my journey, I really bought into, well, this is the way. And now I get to create my own way, and I don't have to follow those old systems anymore. Not the parts that I can't fully embrace because they do not align with me. That's what that sacral authority is for me. I get to listen to my gut, check in with my instinct, and decide from there whether it's a hell yes or a hell no. I get to question everything, and I get to come into my own essence, who I am today. I'm sharing this because in my reflecting, I think about some earlier episodes of this podcast where I may have conveyed things that I believed in that moment in time that may no longer be aligned with who I'm becoming, this next version of myself. And that's all good. I'm not going to go back and change anything or delete any episodes because those are a snapshot in time, and I enjoy going back now and then to check on my own growth. It's just for you listening to have an awareness that I may go into new territory and I'm not necessarily contradicting who I was at the time I said certain things, but I'm going to identify that as much as possible along the way and explain the ways I'm finding new outlooks, as I've done here today with a couple of the practices I am layering into my life, practices that are new for me. I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head in terms of what may have changed from earlier episodes, but I'm sure these things will reveal themselves as I progress, as I continue to grow. And really, I'm just so grateful that you are here with me on this wild ride. As Rumi says, let yourself be silently drawn by the stronger pull of what you really love. And that is what I'm talking about. If some of the things I am sharing resonate with you, that is coming from you, not from me. If some of the things I am sharing make you cringe a little, that is also coming from you, not from me. You are being drawn to what you really love, just as I am. It is always a great opportunity to check in with yourself when you are bothered by things in the world around you. And that brings me back to how I opened this episode. Welcome to Gilead. I have been a bit salty over the past week about the new laws in Texas, and that is definitely putting it mildly. The best part is that I checked in with my friend and fellow coach this morning, and in 30 minutes we worked through it. We even recorded it for our new podcast, which is a collaborative effort and especially for moms. It is called Moms Getting Mental with Sunny and Leanna. And as soon as we get out of the holding pattern for Apple approval, you'll be able to find it on this and other platforms. We've been in purgatory for over a week now, so who knows? In the meantime, I invite you to join our private Facebook group, Moms Getting Mental, and you will be able to find the video recording there that we just did this morning. I think I'm going to call it, How Could This Be Happening For Me? Yes, because that's where we went with a very difficult and highly charged topic. So, I'd love to see you there. Come join us. We love to talk about the hard shit as well as share the humor to lighten up the darkness that surrounds us at times. More conversations with my friends on this podcast starting back soon. I know I have one to share with you next week that I've already mentioned, and it is fantastic. I may have something even sooner. Lots to discuss these days. Stay tuned. Connect with your own uniqueness. Light up. Shine on.